All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for having us here and bearing through with us through this last couple of minutes. We are so honored to be here in Athens. We have had the pleasure of exploring the city the last couple of days, and it's so beautiful. So thank you so much for the invite. Today we are going to talk about co-creation between UX and software. But before we dive in, I would like to introduce you to Thamar. Thamar is the Global Director, User Experience Design Director of Adidas. She lives and breathes everything that's sport related. And she loves to simplify things because she strongly believes that people are not stupid. The things are just not designed the way that they expect it to work. Makes sense, right? So with that in mind, she and Adidas both think impossible is nothing.
Yes, that's correct. And can you all hear me? Yeah, all right. Let me introduce Simone, who started this talk. So she actually graduated as a speech therapist, so you can learn a lot about different languages and how to learn languages from Simone as well. But then did a traineeship and ended up as a developer at Open Value. And in the past, she really wanted to become also a musical star. So I'm very happy to be on the stage today with this rock star.
Finally on stage.
Finally on stage to present to you our common passion, and that is how to solve problems together, by how to co-create together between UX and development. What we will go through today is first we're going to look at the team. Is that better? Yeah. First, we're going to look at the team and how you can best set up your team. We saw some questions already in the app, so we're going to go through the different team setups. Then we're going to go through the process and where you can co-create and where maybe, you just work alone. And then we dive into the details of that process. What kind of tools do you use and how do you work on that? So some examples.
Yeah, cool. All right, but first let's start with the why we are here. Well, we strongly believe that you will have a better user product outcome or a release whenever you start working together. And why is that? Because we think that everybody within the development process should have a clear understanding of why they are building stuff and for whom they are building it. And if that information only lies with design, how can we have the satisfaction of delivering a product that will maybe never be used because we never really knew for whom we were building it and making it like the right fit? Take, for example, a painter. A painter gets the assignment to draw a forest. Beautiful painting, and he is super happy with it. It's one of his greatest works, and he presented it to the customer. But the customer is super unhappy. He actually expected something more like this. He's more of an abstract kind of person. And next to that, he would love to hang it in the garden, but because the middleman never really told him about the situation where the painting would be in, so for example in the outside, he used watercoloring. So with one rain, the painting would be totally destroyed. We have here two examples of one, the painter or the developer in this case, not knowing its customer, and on the other hand, a middleman who cannot anticipate to the toolkit that the painter has as his options. And because he never knew about different water or oil coloring, like different kind of coloring, he could never have given that information because he didn't know it was relevant. And now, we think that when we start coloring together, when we start filling in that painting, we will find the gaps quicker and can make the painting or the end product a better product. And I can already hear you think, Simone, that is all nice and dandy. We have had tons of people, especially managers, telling us how great it is if we start working together. But I have some concerns.
Yeah, I can hear you thinking, like, we're already in so many meetings. If we start co-creating, does that, make too much meetings?
Yeah, and they don't get us. When we start talking about the technical implementations, They don't get it.
But I cannot guarantee my quality of work when I need to deliver 100 things more, all at the same time.
Yeah, will I now be responsible of making the design?
But we have roles for reasons, right? Does everybody need to own the same skills?
I tune out when they start talking about their part of the process.
Hey, I don't get paid to do this.
Okay, well, bye. No, these are also very valid concerns, and we are not here to tell you that they are not true. They are very true, and we are actually here to address them, to see how can we help you, give some tools to get these more out of the way and get your real benefits of working together. So let's start there.
All right, so talking about the team setup, it all starts with the type of project that you will be working on. So that's the most important thing. And then you go into this triangle where you look at the personality that you need of the different team members. Because everybody has their own mindset, their own passion, their own values on how they like to work and what they would like to work on. And that needs to be in line with the type of project that you're working on. And of course, you need a variety in skill sets. So you need that diversity in the team to be a successful team, because if we all can do the same thing, then why would we work together, right? So you need that diversity. And then within that team, you need to look at what is our team purpose, and all have the same team purpose. Because if you think we're going to build something else than I think what we're going to do, then that's going to become very difficult. And on that team purpose, it is not the what. It's not about the what we're going to build together, but it's about the why. Why are we building this? Because we all know that people don't buy what you do, but they actually buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe in. So for instance, we are both wearing white sneakers. My brand is a bit better, but okay. But why did I buy these white sneakers? Because everybody can buy white sneakers everywhere. I bought them because I believe in the story behind these sneakers, and that's because it's made of recycled plastic out of the ocean. And when they told me that story, that this is made out of plastic that we get out of the ocean, I was ready to pay more for this product because I believe in it. And I want to be part of the team that sells this product in the store and online. And I will do more to make this team work. And I think you can all recognize it, hopefully, with all the projects you're working on. Or maybe you now consider I need to switch projects. That could be.
Nice. Yeah. And if we don't, then like we got a question actually in the chat. Thank you for that. About like what kind of team structures can we use to cooperate in this kind of way of working? Well, first, let me start with an example without this way of working, so we can get that out of the way. We start with operation teams. So they are teams like network layer, infrastructure teams, a team that doesn't have a user interface or doesn't really help an end consumer. Of course, it helps other teams within the business, but it doesn't really need a design or anything. Do you have an example from Adidas for that?
Yeah, so for instance, in Adidas, this can be if you want to allocate the sales to the right team. So the sales of the outdoor products go to the outdoor business unit, and from our original stores go to the originals business unit, so you can track that. Very important for the business and for the company, but it doesn't need my support as a designer. But as a developer, it's very important that you develop that right.
Yeah, and we wanted to address that here because we're not saying in this talk that it's the holy grail, that for every situation you should have a close collaboration. This is why we're pointing it out here. There's a situation and a purpose for every kind of team structure. So the second team structure you can have is a process team, for example. You can already see there are two kind of people in this team representing the developers and the designers. This team is responsible for an entire customer journey from front to back. Like the entire customer journey will be done by this team. So there will be UXers, UIers, front-enders, back-enders. Everything will be in this team in order to facilitate that customer journey.
Yeah, and that's within Adidas, for instance, if you're working in the team that takes care of the checkout, the online checkout, whether that's in the app or the website or any other channel, here you need to work together because I need to understand what the delivery methods are and when we actually receive those options for the end user or the payment methods and what we need to show the user there. And also, of course, with the security that the user has a secure payment. So here you really work in a process team.
Yeah. The third team is a feature team, and you can already see a little bit of difference, right? Let me see. Oh, this works so nicely. Okay, cool. Up front, you can see the designers. They form one team, and underneath you can see different developer teams. All the developer teams, they have one or more functionalities as their responsibility. So for example, one team handles the chat box, but the chat box will be used in multiple customer journeys. So we highly recommend to have one person of a design team also participating in the team, like a real team member, participating in the Scrum meetings, also doing all the retros if you have them in your company. So you have a really close collaboration and at least you have a really strong bond and vision and purpose for that. Although that single designer is not delivering all the designs. He will bring back the work that comes from that team to the design team. And over there, they will pick it up together and take care of multiple customer journeys. So they will think of the customer journeys and then they think, okay, we need a chat box, we need a order basket. And then they go to the different teams in order to get that all together. Most of the time you see this work a little bit better in larger companies because you want to have similarities everywhere. So if you want to have a chat box, you don't want to have a different chat box in different like pages of your application, right? Because that seems a little bit weird and off. So the larger your company gets, the more likely it is that they go to a structure like this.
Yeah, and as an example, again, within Adidas, this is where, for us, the digital retail team really comes in. So we focus on the whole journey within retail, like, you know, the actual stores, and how can we facilitate that with digital tools? So the iPad apps for our employees, but also for consumers. If you step into, for instance, the London store, you will see we have a smart mirror and you can stay into your fitting room and just request a different size. Very convenient, but then of course the employee needs to know about it, so he gets a notification on the iPad, you name it. We design the whole journey as designers, but then reach out to the feature teams to build those individual features.
Cool. The last team structure that we want to go over today, of course you can find 1,000 more on the internet, but is a project team. It's a temporary team, whereas the other ones were permanent teams. The project team delivers for either a process team or a feature team. Don't want to spend too much time on it because we lost some time, but just keep in mind to have a very close collaboration with the team that you're delivering for, because it's never nice if you worked for months on a product and then deliver it to the team that's going to maintain it and they are not happy with it. Yeah, doesn't make sense for anyone. So keep a line. All right, this is a short summary of what we just talked about. And let's move on to the process.
Yes, so before we start looking into the process, I think everybody is aware that, you know, you look at your process all through the lens of the business that you're working in. So you understand your mission, your vision, and the strategy and the purpose of your company. And then we look at the design process. So that's this circle, where we first want to understand the users. Then we go into the exploring mode, like what do we actually need to solve? What are the problems and the opportunities? And once we identify them, then we go into materializing that. So making the wireframes, the designs, the ideas, validating that with our end users. And when the validation is positive, then we go into final designs. And then we usually go into the next part.
Yes, so here we have the DevOps cycle. I think very familiar for most of you guys. For the ones not, very short, the first cycle, which states dev, is a development phase. It's where you code, where you build, and where you are going to release. And then the next phase, the operational cycle, is where everything from production on, and where you maintain and monitor and are going to look if you can improve.
All right, and this is what we've done. We've combined those circles, and maybe you can use your magic wand to show the circles again. So you go from planning into empathizing and defining, ideate, prototype, and validate. And then you continue into the dev cycle, where you code, you build, you test. And then in the upcycle, where you release, deploy, operate, and monitor. Now, let's dive into this. Now we're going to get into the details. Here is where we believe, when we started talking about it, where we can really co-create. So planning is what you always do together, because if you understand, when I'm ready with a design, she's ready to start coding, that's very important, right? Because otherwise she has to wait a couple of days and, I don't know, play a bit of ping pong.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, something
that
like
would
that.
be great. Cool.
But you don't want that, right? So in the design phase, we think we can really work together also on ideation, maybe even prototype together, and be part of the validation. And then also on monitoring and testing, that's where we really come together. So if we go into the details of this, then we go through it step by step. So the first part is empathizing with our end users, so we know what they want, what their needs are, what their wishes are. We do that by user research. But also looking at the data, if it's already an existing solution, what does the data tell us? We observe people. So for instance, in retail, we can observe people and really see how they move around in the store, what they're struggling with, and then we can also do the interviews. And what I always love to do, there's a million ways on how to analyze that, but I love journey mapping. So if we zoom into the journey map, then you can see that we really look into a specific scenario, and then you have different stages. Like for instance, click and collect. I always love that because that's cross-channel. First, you need to, via the app, maybe just see what fulfill your order, do the whole checkout, you name it, and then you go to the store. And then also an employee comes in, right? So you have multiple players there. The employee comes in and he needs to fetch your order for you. Then you want to try it on. And of course, you also hope to get some additional information around the product that you haven't read online already and see if the size and fit is right. So if we go through that and we use the user research, we see what the pain points are and what the delights are of a customer. And the pain points you want to solve, and the delights you look at, because maybe if you optimize the delights, it can even be more of a delighter, right? You can really have a benefit compared to your competitors. And that then translates into the opportunities that you see. And what we then do is map those opportunities. And a lot of times, this is what Simone told me as well, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. So I take over for a sec. No, it's so funny because I'm hoping that you guys recognize this, but it has happened to me tons of times, and probably will happen a couple of times more, that we get an assignment as developers from RPO saying, okay, yeah, we want to release this and that, and we are going to do blah. And then I'm like, how did you know about the solution? Like, you didn't ask any of us, like, how much time it costs, what is the effort, how did you come up to this choice. So yeah, I see a lot of time that designers and product owners are making this opportunity map, whereas I think they are missing some very valuable input.
Definitely. And I can even say sometimes I see the product owners just doing that, so only the business input comes in. So, and we want the end users input to come in. So this is great, right? Where we really, as a team, sit together and make this map. And everything that's high effort, where we definitely need the support of a developer, because I don't know what's high effort. I mean, I only know how to sketch it out, but not if it's high effort to build. And of high value. Now, I can see, because of the research, what can be high value for our end users. So anything that's low effort, high value, that's the first things that we want to pick up, right?
Yeah, cool. At the moment that we know in which direction we want to go, there is a great chance for everyone to really start working together. I got the question in the chat asking like, at what point does a technical design come in? Is it already before like prototyping and wireframes? I don't think so. Like, I don't think that the actual technical implementation details are already available at that point. However, I do think it's very wise to sit together before wireframing to get a clear understanding onto what you are going to build. And I have here a tool. It's not a session about event storming, so if you want to know more about event storming, please look into it yourself. But I go over it a little bit because I really like this way of working. Event storming is a tool where it's a little bit like refinement, but in an early stage. So you're not going to think about how you are going to solve the problem. You are going to talk about what is actually the problem and what should it look like. The idea is that you do it on a whiteboard, preferably if you have the option physically without laptops, leave them for a moment, get your sticky notes out, and start with a blank sheet. Then the one who initialized the meeting is going to put on a start event and an end event. And then everybody in the room, so designers, developers all together, they are going to write down the events that they think will happen somewhere in between that start and end event. So they are going to draw out like a customer journey. The events that they are drawing out doesn't need to be chronological. It's really like a brainstorm session. Just get it out of your head. It can be crazy, it can be weird, it can be very obvious. Just state everything on the board, stick it there, and then after everybody is done, you are going to organize it, make it chronological, and see if you have some repetitive sticky notes, for example. Important thing, if you're doing this, it's very handy to write the events down in past tense. So yeah, in the past, because if an event occurs, it has happened. When you're done with that, you're going to pick another color, in this case blue, and you're going to write down what the command was that led to that event. So for example, someone submitted their order that they had in their baskets, for example. If you have done that, you are moving on to the triggers. So was it actually a human who pushed that button? Was it maybe time-based, like every evening at 8 an email or trigger is sent out? Or anything else that you can think of which was the trigger of that command. Then, of course, there can be some conditions, makes sense. And when you're all done with that, you have a quite nice timeline on what will happen in your customer journey. And then you're going to make circles to see what domains we are talking about. So, for example, an order in cycle A can be a different order than an order in cycle B. For example, an order in cycle A only has the items that someone ordered, whereas an order in cycle B also has an address and a person that it needs to be delivered to and blah, 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 blah. So you are talking about different domains where a term can mean different things. So in reality, it can look something like this.
Yes, so then we've come now from the journey to an opportunity to the solution. And I think that we shouldn't do is try to tackle all those solutions independently, but we really as a team need to focus on one solution and map out those solutions. I think it was Holly who said, like, in the keynote yesterday, also keep track of which solutions were successful and which are not, and I can definitely say that helps a lot. So then we go into, let's dive into this solution that we want to validate. So what we do is we ideate together. So we start sketching together. And you don't need to be the best sketcher, but just sketch it out what the solution should be. And we can do that together from multiple perspectives again. And then we prototype that. So it can be something like a wireframe like this. It can also be a high-end prototype. And here we can discuss, like, hey, is a front-end developer supporting me with the prototype? Because that's faster than me making it in a prototyping tool. Or am I making that and are they already starting on something else? Or maybe work on a different solution in the meantime. But preferably, we're all seeing how the end user responds on the solution that we thought of. And yeah, be part of that validation. Just sit in, listen in to what the end user are saying, and then you can come on new ideas or see if they have a problem, how we can solve that idea already. And then immediately after the user testing, we can discuss that together and come up with, again, another brainstorm on ideation until we say, now we feel that we have a solution that we actually want to build.
Yeah, and something we actually going to dive a little bit deeper in maybe later on if we have time, but which I'm willing to say now, is that so these steps that we're seeing here, we think of it as like we have two layers of responsibility. In what we present, we believe in a shared responsibility on the end product. However, we also strongly believe in separate responsibilities and trust in the speciality of your co-worker. So these three steps that we're seeing here, although we are stimulating to work together, the responsibility will lie with the designer in this case.
Yeah, and then what we end up with after all these steps is actually a blueprint. And a blueprint, we all know we need a blueprint when we're building a house, right? So, so you know where the bathroom is going to be and where the living room and where the kitchen is going to be. That's exactly what you need here as well. So from the user journey, you have your separate phases, you have your user actions, and then you also know what are the front stage actions that you need to build, but also the backstage actions. And this is your blueprint, so you always look back on that, and from here you start creating your user journeys.
Yeah, this will also be your documentation and also will prevent some frustrations creating your Jira tickets or anything else you work with. Or like at least you have your documentation on what needs to happen instead of after a refinement, it's like, okay, let's create some user stories. I think it was this, this, and that. And then after a few weeks, you figured out, oh, we forgot the notifications. Oh, yeah, yeah. Was it the fault of the designers that the requirements weren't clear enough? Was it the fault of the developers because they kind of forgot about it? It's a nice tool.
Yeah, so in the end, this is what you get after the design process. You have your journeys, you've mapped out your opportunities and the solutions that you want to test together. And for the solutions where you said, hey, we validated that, we really want to build this, you have your Jira tickets and you can get started on development.
All right, development. There we go, the development cycle, awesome. Development cycle is, of course, very nice, but also very specific. I have had a lot of struggles, still have to this day, actually. Like it comes along in multiple retros time after time again that designers give back to us. In a refinement, we tune out. Like you guys start talking about specifics and we cannot like tag along. And can you please visualize what you are talking about? And we keep forgetting, but we're trying. And here's some tools on how you can visualize stuff. First of all, the process flow, I think many of you will know, right? It looks a little bit also like the event storming outcome. However, the event storming outcome is way more about the flow, whereas a process flow will be more in depth about like already a little bit more on the implementation level. I don't like about the process flow, but this is personal, like there's no wrong and right, but personally, I don't like it too much that it's very common that one person of the team draws out the process flow, and then, if you're lucky, a few others review it. It's very much a single person process, mostly done at the end of the coding cycle. And we would really recommend to do this together. Again, like that brainstorm session, because, I'm referring to Holly again, like the keynote, very good keynote. No, but like the most awesome ideas come out of stupid, or the most great solution come out of stupid ideas, right? If one person is going to draw out this process flow without the input of others, it's very hard to think of to think outside of the box. You will trigger each other when you start working together. Then we have a sequence diagram, also another tool. Can I see some hands? How many of you know about a sequence diagram? Okay, yeah, cool, awesome. More than half, I would say. Okay, perfect. Don't need to spend too much time on it. Sequence diagram is really about the different actors that, like what a message is going through. In my experience, it's mostly used by developers and not too much in conversation with designers. However, don't underestimate our designers. They will understand. Like, this is already quite visually for them. And they benefit from seeing this flow. Also to realize, like, when my call is going to the backend, it actually doesn't hit one layer, it hits 5 layers, it hits 10 layers, and every piece there can occur some kind of different issue, like there can be a different risk. And you can talk about it more easily, you can have it visually, like, okay, what kind of error do you want to have? Do you actually want to have an error, or should we like handle it in the back end that the user never knows? And you can also more easily see the gaps. So, here we have a call to a third party, but I don't know what do you want us to do when the third party service is down or anything. Then last but not least, entity relationship is more of a semantics, of course, like what kind of objects do you have and what does that entity hold. This is also quite interesting for designers because they can challenge us on which fields we are holding. Of course, sometimes we need some fields for backend processing, but most of the time we are saving so much data that we don't actually use. And yet that conversation, like, do we actually need everything within this entity, is a very nice conversation, also security-wise. Then, after all that talk, we can finally code. Nice. This is where our responsibilities lie. We don't expect designers to pair program with us. It's not what we're talking about. We do, however, think that things change quite quickly when you start coding. I haven't had, I think, maybe a single experience, but like very few experience where my requirements didn't change at all during my coding practices. So keep a close line. Please change whatever you build as documentation, the visualization, change it right away in order to have that as your validation for your testing. And this is where you come in again, right?
Yeah, here it's really great if you show what you've built and show it in separate stages, right? If you're done building one page or one piece of the process, already show it to your designer to see, was that actually what we thought of in the ideation? Does that relate to your design? And do like a user test with your designer on, does it work the way it should work? Yeah, that really helps.
Cool. All right, then we're going into the Upcycle. With 4 minutes on the clock, I'm going to go over this a little bit quicker. It's because of the delay in the start, of course. And that's actually quite sad because my main message about the Upcycle was give it proper attention. And what am I doing? No, like most of the time, I see or notice that the ops or the dashboarding, the tracing, anything related to the ops cycle is done on the site. It's done after we went to production, and then someone who feels responsible or thinks that's a nice challenge, he will do it on the side. Whereas I would highly challenge you guys to really create user stories for it. And again, sit together, what kind of metrics do we want to use, and what kind of dashboard can help both the developers as the designers in getting to that next cycle of our 3-cycle thingy. We need to figure out a name for it. Yeah, we're going to think about that. If you have suggestions, write it in the app. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because here, something I learned which works really well, I think, for everyone in the organization is to release it in target audiences. Before Adidas, I also worked at a large bank, and there we actually also did closed user groups. So it was only with the employees, because we wanted to test out new payment methods that we built. But of course, if something goes wrong, then you don't want the whole population to know you kind of failed, right? So you can really test it in a closed user group. But also within Adidas, what we do is a lot of A/B testing online that really helps to understand if your solution really works, to see actually the data behind it, because you cannot see everything from the user testing. Sometimes you just need to release it and then see how people work with it. But target audiences as well, just, yeah, release it not to the full public, but some people love to test your app in beta. And you get the best response from it. And if you know who's testing it, talk to them, observe them. That would be the best.
Yeah, also as developers, it's so nice to speak to your customers, or at least see them from a distance, like in a zoo. No, no, it is very nice to know who you are developing for, and it will very much help also in your satisfaction of what you are delivering, because you know for whom you are building it, which makes it so much more personal. So these are the graphs. Already talked a little bit about them, to really pay attention to that. So I'm going to go on.
Yeah, we look at the graphs from the user perspective. So we have these personas that we think of sometimes, or really like the target audience. And we look at that again. And that way we look at it to see how are we doing. If we're doing great, we go to the next solution, right? But if we see that it is disappointing because we set this target at the beginning, then we go back into the design cycle again. So that's where the round goes around.
Yeah, cool. All right, we're at the end. The beeper has already gone off. Here are the key takeaways. Look at your team structure, what works for your team, what is the purpose of your team. Successful individuals doesn't make a successful team. You really need to look at the big picture. Incorporate design into your development cycle, if that works for your team, of course. The responsibility of the end product lies with the entire team, so you need to challenge each other. However, the responsible of different parts of the cycle are separate and can be like, they belong to a specific speciality. And that is where you need to trust your co-workers, right? Please find a language or a tool that works for both of you. And it will not work the very first time, I can guarantee you that. You will also need to be agile on that part. But keep on checking in with each other and see what works for you. And give proper attention to the upcycle. All right, these were some resources. You can find them all in our slide deck, in the QR code. And thank you so much.
Thank you.